Did you know that Thomas Jefferson's father and Meriwether Lewis's grandfather were part of the early exploration of the American West? Well, if not, you're going to find out today. So let's get started. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to Virtual History 360. I'm Mr. Wade, and today we are talking about the Louisiana Purchase and the exploration of Lewis and Clark. Now, be sure to stick around until the end of the video to hear about the connection between Jefferson and Lewis. But first, here is some historical background information. After the French and Indian War, France surrendered basically all of the Louisiana Territory to Spain. This didn't really impact the U.S. because we were still allowed to use the Mississippi River and to trade out of the port at New Orleans. Then, Napoleon Bonaparte took power in France in 1799 and wanted to regain France's former territory in the United States. In 1802, King Charles IV of Spain returned the Louisiana Territory to France and canceled America's port access. President Jefferson sent Robert Livingston and then eventually James Monroe to negotiate to purchase New Orleans, and were shocked when they were offered the entire territory, which constituted 827,000 square miles, for $15 million. Why would France sell so low? Probably because they needed money for the impending war with England, coupled with the recent Haitian Revolution that saw France lose their plantations as well as their need for farmland to feed the colony. I'll tell you what, if you want to learn more about the Louisiana Purchase itself, including who led the Haitian Revolution, check out this video up here somewhere on Manifest Destiny. All you gotta do is click on that little I button, okay? But make sure you do that after you finish this video. All right, so Jefferson soon commissioned an expedition led by Meriwether Lewis and William Clark to explore the territory acquired in this Louisiana Purchase. Knowing that this would be a long, arduous journey, the men gathered supplies as well as gifts for native tribes that they would encounter along the way. Lewis entrusted Clark to recruit men for their Corps of Discovery. Throughout the winter of 1803 into 1804, Clark recruited and trained men near St. Louis, Missouri. He chose unmarried, healthy men who were good hunters and knew survival skills. The expedition party included 45 souls, including Lewis, Clark, 27 unmarried soldiers, a French Indian interpreter, a contracted boat crew, and a slave owned by Clark named York. On May 14, 1804, Clark and the Corps joined Lewis and headed upstream up onto the Missouri River in their keelboat as well as two smaller boats at a rate of about 15 miles per day upstream. Heat, swarms of insects, and strong river currents made this trip arduous at best. Most of the land Lewis and Clark surveyed was already occupied by Native Americans. In fact, the Corps encountered around 50 Native American tribes, including the Shoshone, the Manden, Minotari, the Blackfeet, the Chinook, and the Sioux. Lewis and Clark developed a first contact protocol for meeting these new tribes. They bartered goods and presented the tribe's leader with a Jefferson Indian Peace Medal, which was a coin engraved with the image of Thomas Jefferson on one side, that you see here, and an image of two hands clasped beneath a tomahawk and a peace pipe on the other side with the inscription, "Peace and Friendship." In early November, the Corps came across villages of friendly Manden and Minotari Indians near present-day Washburn, North Dakota, and decided to set up camp downriver for the winter along the banks of the Missouri River. Within about 4 weeks, they built a triangular-shaped fort called Fort Manden, which was surrounded by 16-foot-tall pickets and contained quarters and storage rooms and basically its own self-contained fort. While at Fort Manden, Lewis and Clark met French-Canadian trapper Toussaint Charbonneau and hired him as an interpreter. They allowed his pregnant Shoshone Indian wife, Sacagawea, to join him on the expedition. Sacagawea had been kidnapped by Hidatsa Indians at the age of 12 and then sold to Charbonneau. Lewis and Clark hoped she could help them communicate with any Shoshone they'd encounter on their journey. On February 11, 1805, Sacagawea gave birth to a son and named him John Baptiste. They called him Little Pomp. She became an invaluable and respected asset for Lewis and Clark. So, the Corps crosses through Montana and makes their way to the Continental Divide via the Lemhi Pass, where, with Sacagawea's help, they purchased horses from the Shoshone. While there, Sacagawea reunited with her brother, Camelhoit, I apologize for my mispronunciation if any, who hadn't seen her since she was kidnapped. The group next headed out of Lemhi Pass and crossed the Bitterroot mountain range using the harrowing Lolo Trail and the help of many horses and a handful of Shoshone guides. This leg of the journey proved to be the most difficult. Many of the party suffered from frostbite, hunger, dehydration, bad weather, freezing temperatures, and, of course, exhaustion. Still, despite the merciless terrain and conditions, not a single soul was lost. How incredible is that? Well, a bedraggled and harried Corps finally reached the stormy Pacific Ocean in November of 1805. They'd completed their mission and now had to find a place to live for the winter before heading back home. They decided to make camp near present-day Astoria, Oregon, and started building Fort Clatsop on December 10th and moved in by Christmas. On March 23rd of 1806, the following spring, the Corps left Fort Clatsop for home. They retrieved their horses from the Nez Perce and waited until June for the snow to melt to cross the mountains into the Missouri River Basin. On August 12th, Lewis and Clark and their crews reunited, because they went separate ways, and dropped off Sacagawea and her family at the Manden villages. They then headed down the Missouri River, with currents moving in their favor this time, and arrived in St. Louis on September 23rd, where they were received with a hero's welcome. Now, this was a super abbreviated version of the story. I tell you what, if you want to learn more about Lewis and Clark, I recommend the book Undaunted Courage by Stephen E. Ambrose. Okay? But what about Jefferson's father and Lewis's grandfather that I mentioned earlier? Well, it turns out they were part of the Loyal Land Company that was formed in 1749 with the purpose of exploring the lands west of the Appalachian Mountains. In 1753, a group was sent to search the Missouri River and see if it connected to the Pacific Ocean. Now, although they were not successful, and the French and Indian War put a stop to future expeditions, the seed was sown, and Thomas Jefferson continued the legacy by instigating 3 separate expeditions to explore the West all the way to California after the American Revolution. So, after hearing that, is there any surprise that Jefferson would send Lewis and Clark to explore the Louisiana Territory and beyond? Not in my mind. Now, isn't it cool that there are connections between the figures of American history that you might not have heard before? Now, do you know any other connections that we could talk about here? Any other, webs woven that keep people together? I want to hear from you. So tell me in the comments anything that you can help me with, okay? Now, while you're there, go ahead and hit that like button for me so YouTube knows to share this video with everyone. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. If that button is red, let's turn it gray. And be sure to check out my other videos like the ones you see to the side over here. I have other U.S. history videos like this one. I have world history. I have government, civics videos. I even have videos that are shot in 360 that you can look all the way around. So check them out. Do yourself a favor because I know you're going to like them. All right. So for Virtual History 360, I'm Mr. Wade. I'll see you next time.